Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Twelfth Night and we get to hear from Sebastian and Antonio today in Act 2, Scene 1. So we did have an Act 1, Scene 5 that we haven't talked about yet. I told you that this play, there's a lot fewer monologues than in some of the others, which is in line with a lot of other Shakespearean comedies. But anyway, quick recap of the stuff that's going on. We have Viola, who was stranded in a shipwreck in Illyria, which is like modern-day Croatia. And since she seems to have lost her brother, but the ship captain thought that maybe her brother might have survived because he like tied himself to a piece of wood. But she's like, I don't even know where he is, and it's not safe for me to be here. I should disguise myself as a man and go try to get in the service of Orsino, which she managed to do, as she's in disguise as Cesario. And Orsino likes Cesario better than any of his other attendants and has trusted Cesario with going to try to woo Olivia. Olivia being a woman who is in mourning for her brother, who she lost. She says for 7 years she's not accepting any suitors, any visitors, anything like that. Orsino is very much in love with her, even though he may have only met her like once. But anyway, he keeps sending messengers and gifts and all this sort of stuff to try to woo her, and she keeps turning him away. But now Orsino has decided to send Cesario, hoping, because Cesario has a little bit of a feminine quality about him, so hoping that that will get through to Olivia. So at the beginning of Act 1, Scene 5, we have Maria, or Mariah as she is often called, talking to Feste, the clown, who is just called clown in the entire folio. And Feste has been away for a little while, and Mariah is like, why have you been away? Why don't you tell me where you've been? But then Olivia comes in, we finally get to meet her, and Malvolio, who is one of Olivia's attendants, and some other people, and Olivia's like, take the fool away, and Festa's like, yeah, you heard him, take her away. And she's like, are you calling me a fool? And he's like, yeah, I am. And he proves that she's a fool because she's mourning for her brother who's in heaven, and it would make more sense to mourn for her brother if he was in hell than in heaven. But if he's in heaven, which is the good place, why do you have to mourn his passing? Because he's in the happy afterlife. She's kind of intrigued by that and like, you know, okay, maybe this isn't so bad. But then Maria, or Mariah, comes back in and says, there's a young man at the gate who wants to talk to you, and he's not taking any of our excuses that we normally give out in order to get him to go away. Like, he's insistent that he has to see you. And Olivia finally agrees, like, yeah, okay, bring him in. And we also get to see Sir Toby Belch in there, who's very drunk in the middle of the day, so he hasn't been very effective at keeping this young gentleman away. But Olivia finally agrees. She says, all right, Malvolio, go get him. Give me a veil. I'm gonna put on my mourning veil so that my face isn't obvious. But then the young man that comes in to see Olivia is obviously Cesario / Viola. And they start talking, and Viola, Cesario, has a written message from Orsino that she starts to read, but then starts going off book a little bit, because also remember, Viola has fallen in love with Orsino. So she expounds upon what Orsino has written to Olivia by drawing on her own feelings, and ends up wooing Olivia actually pretty effectively. At one point, she finally is able to get Olivia by herself so that she can deliver this very personal message. And Olivia is actually kind of taken by it, but she doesn't want to, she still doesn't want to be wooed by Orsino. So she's like, you know, you can tell him that I'm not seeing anybody and I don't buy it, but, you know, but you could maybe come back and tell me what he said or how he took that. And Viola, Cesario, takes that and is like, okay, I'm sorry that this didn't work, and thank you for your time, and sorry we were so offensive, and leaves. And Olivia's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him again. So she calls Malvolio in and says, oh, you got to run after that guy. He left this ring here, and you need to give it back to him, because I'm not going to accept such a token from Orsino. But of course, it's one of her own rings that she's giving away. Orsino hadn't sent a ring. But anyway, so that's the end of Act 1. We have a crazy love square going on with Orsino in love with Olivia, who's in love with Cesario, who's actually Viola, who's actually in love with Orsino. So to kick off Act 2, we get to meet Viola's brother, Sebastian, and he's hanging out with the ship captain Antonio and saying, you know, like, thank you, but I gotta go. You've been overly kind. Really, I have to go. And Antonio's like, can't you tell me where you're going, what you're doing? And Sebastian says, no, sooth, sir. My determinate voyage is mere extravagancy. But I perceive in you so excellent a touch of modesty that you will not extort from me what I am willing to keep in. Therefore, it charges me in manners, the rather to express myself. You must know of me, then, Antonio. My name is Sebastian, which I called Rodrigo. My father was that Sebastian of Messaline, whom I know you have heard of. He left behind him myself and a sister, both born in an hour. If the heavens had been pleased, we would had so ended. But you, sir, altered that. For some hour before you took me from the breach of the sea, was my sister drowned. Alas, the day! A lady, sir, though it was said she much resembled me, was yet of many accounted beautiful. But though I could not with such estimable wonder over far believe that, yet thus far I will boldly publish her. She bore a mind that envy could not but call fair. She is drowned already, sir, with salt water, though I seem to drown her remembrance again with more. So Sebastian had been hiding. He had been calling himself Rodrigo after this shipwreck because his dad is somewhat famous and he didn't want to be associated with his dad. But now he's gotten along so well with Antonio. They've formed such this bond that he feels that he has to come clean and tell him who he is. So he's like, I'm Sebastian, the son of that Sebastian, and I have a twin sister who we were both born together and we should have died together, but you saved me and she drowned. Remember, Viola thinks that her brother Sebastian has drowned. Sebastian now thinks that his sister Viola has drowned. And Antonio's like, oh my goodness. And Sebastian's like, yeah, and we look so much alike. And I'm not going to say that she's beautiful, but I can tell you that she's ridiculously smart and I miss her dearly, and I know she's already drowned, but I'm drowning her again with my tears. And Antonio's like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go now? And Sebastian's like, well, I have to go and try to make something of myself. I'm going to go to Duke Orsino's court. You know, thank you for everything. And Antonio's like, I can be your servant along the way. And Sebastian's like, no, you've already done too much. Thank you. Love you. Gotta go. I'm going to the Duke's court. And he leaves, and Antonio gets a brief moment on stage, like 3 lines, to be like, oh, I have so many enemies in Duke Orsino's court, but I really like that guy, so I gotta go after him. And that's the end of Act 2, Scene 1. And what's really interesting that I see in most modern productions of this, the relationship between Antonio and Sebastian does very much feel like a homosexual relationship, as close as they are. And the scene definitely reads that way and often gets played that way. But if you take a look at any like synopses of this play and look and see how they break down what happens in each scene, they don't touch on that at all. So that's something that you could definitely make a choice for if you wanted to, whether or not it's platonic love or romantic love that Antonio and Sebastian express for each other in this scene. Whatever choice you feel is most compelling. Personally, I think it's most compelling to make it romantic love, but whatever. That's just me. Anyway, so yeah, now we've got siblings who think the other one is dead. They're both going to end up in the same court, and remember Sebastian said that Viola looks a lot like him? And now she's dressed like a man? No, there's not going to be any sort of mistaken identity going on there at all. Nah, not in a Shakespeare play. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow for more as we dig further into this great big mess of a wonderful comedic play. I'll see you then. Mwah.